Today I want to share some of my best training tips to help you guys have your most consistent year of training in 2024. So for me personally, I'm already looking forward to 2024, and after having one of my best years in running, I'm already thinking about what I've done this year that's allowed me to achieve such consistency and what I'll be carrying forward to ensure I can do my best to achieve the same again. Now what I'm about to share has kind of come from nearly 9 years of running as I move into 2024 next year, and also working with my coach now for over a year. Just things that have either come to me over the years that have been really beneficial, or things that I've picked up from my coach that I've now had for over a year and will be moving forward with him into 2024. These are things that I really hope will help you guys. They've massively helped me, so let's get straight into it. So number one, don't over race. This is something that really has come from this year and has made a massive difference. Just working with my coach, I've really scaled back a little bit on the amount of races that I've done this year, and the races that I have done, I've been a bit more strategic as to where I placed them. A lot more of my races came in the summer months when I was doing shorter distance training, but when I was really locked into a marathon block or the recent half marathon block, I did one race in the half marathon block. I think it was one race, and then in my Newport Marathon build back in April, I only did like 2 or 3 races, and the races that I did were very controlled. So I did a 10k in the build up, that was an all-out effort, but when I came to doing a 20-mile race in the build up, it was very controlled. It was 2 miles at a moderate effort, and then he wanted me to lock into 18 miles at marathon pace. Now in previous training blocks, I've gone out there with a 20-mile race and I've raced it probably harder than marathon effort. And I've come away after that with massive fatigue, and that genuinely has taken me 3 or 4 weeks sometimes to really kind of feel normal again in training and wipe that fatigue from me, which if you're about 5 or 6 weeks out from a marathon can be quite worrying when you're not feeling at your best and you realise that actually you really went to the well in that race and it really wasn't necessary. So by controlling that first race meant that I was able to bounce straight off the back of that into training and achieve what I did in the marathon, which was great. Similarly, when it came into the half marathon, I only had one race, I believe. I can't remember if there was another one. And that was a 10-mile race. Again, in previous times, I would have just gone out and raced that really hard. My coach said, you're 3 or 4 weeks out from your goal race. We don't need, again, to go to the well here. We just need to get a good controlled effort, and let's use it as a workout. 5 miles marathon pace, 3 miles half pace, and then 2 miles. If you can pick it up, then please do so. And I did, and it was really tough. And I ran 57:49 or 47 or something like that. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, gosh, that was really hard to pick it up to half marathon pace after doing 5 miles at marathon effort. But the beauty of that was bouncing off the back of that race. It only took me really like a week to recover, and then I really felt like I was back in full flow, and I could still train in that week. I just did feel a bit of fatigue. But again, in the past when I've done that sort of race, I've really wiped myself out for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's really affected training. Rock up to race day and I split the 10-mile mark in a half marathon in 55 minutes and 40 something seconds. So I've shaved a couple of minutes off there and I've run a massive PB. Again, it's all about, comes down to controlling the effort, and the other races that I've done have been dropped in and around the shorter distance block and outside other training blocks where I can just go and have a little bit of fun. So when I'm in a big build up, it's been all about not over racing, not overdoing it, and controlling those efforts to make sure I can keep stacking those weeks up. And not having a massive mileage jump is the second thing that I want to talk about. I personally have a safe zone of around 55 to 65 miles a week. That's what I've been used to for the last 1, 2, maybe 3 years, I think. And in terms of the volume of running, I have taken that up, and I'm probably due to step up again and add another run day in at some point, because it's been about 1.5 years since I've been running 6 times a week, so I could probably do with trying to up it to 7. But I've never at any point over my nearly 9 years of running have I ever done a monstrous mileage jump. I've always just taken it really steady, let my body get used to it, and then settle in there. And then what my body can do is handle more quality miles within that volume that I do per week. So I can put in more sessions, I can put in more quality effort, shall we say, and it allows me to get more bang for my buck, squeeze more juice out of that lemon before then moving on and stepping up to the next one. I see so many runners taking big jumps going, I'm going to run a marathon, I need to run 2 or 3 extra days a week, I need to increase my mileage almost double, and it just ends in absolute disaster. It's never going to end well, and your body is just not going to be geared up to jumping up those distances so quickly. The golden rule is you should never increase volume and intensity at the same time. So if you are going to increase things, you either increase your intensity or your volume, and if you do, it's at a very small amount. Get used to that, then take the next step. So not doing that this year has been massive, just holding again in the right safe zone. During my marathon training, peaked at 72 or 73 miles, and a lot of my miles were around the 60 to 65 mile mark, so that was brilliant. My body held up perfectly, no injuries and no issues around that. In the summer, it dropped as low as 42 or 43 miles when I was doing speed work. The long run dropped, a lot of my runs dropped, but the intensity went up. And now as I'm starting to get ready for my next marathon, and also during my half marathon recent block, again, I was running around 50 to 60 miles. And again, that's what I'm hitting now. So just keeping consistent and adjusting volume and intensity, but keeping it within a relatively comfortable zone has been massive for me. And when I do take that next step, I'll be taking it with extreme caution. So yes, no massive mileage jumps or no massive intensity jumps either. And number 3, getting on top of muscle knots and muscle tightness quickly has made a massive difference for me. So many injuries that us runners face often start with just simple muscle tightness, muscle knots. Then we'll build up compensation patterns where the muscles are a little bit tight or knotted, and then that's when injuries can start to occur. So we all have those problematic areas, whether it's your calf, hamstring, quads, back, glutes. For me, it's my adductors. They're my Achilles heel, shall we say, and I'll often get knots in my adductors. And another sore area that I'll sometimes get is down the outside of my legs towards my ankle bones. And so I use a couple of tools for that to get on top of things. My Pure Sport Muscle Balm with my gua sha tool, which I'll just iron out the muscle fibers. And then my massage gun, I'll use that too. And what I like to do is when I've finished a long run in particular, that's when my adductors can sometimes be quite tight, and also post-session as well. I'll leave it sort of half an hour to an hour, and then I'll put the muscle balm on, use the gua sha tool in the adductors and down the outside of my legs, and then get the massage gun and just gently work around those muscle knots whilst extending and contracting that muscle, just to let the muscle knot kind of loosen up and then eventually break up and get back to normal. And again, the next day I feel like $1 million. I feel brilliant and I feel like I can go again. So all that muscle tightness has then gone. I'll then also do some light stretching in the adductor area once that's done, just to really stretch it all out. That, over the years, has been an absolute game changer for me, and I highly recommend. Obviously, you need to seek physio advice if you have muscle tightness and muscle knots, but you start to build up those patterns in your body. You know where you've got a bit of a weakness or whatever, and you start to work on that, and you start to be able to become a bit more resilient to it by doing that sort of stuff, which again can allow you to stack up those weeks. So getting on top of those faster, straight away after runs, can mean the difference between compensation patterns building up and getting injured, as opposed to being able to get out the next day and go for a run. And number 4, cycling training blocks, not only for the mental perspective but also physical, is absolutely brilliant. I mean, don't get me wrong, I will probably be also one of those runners who loves to do back-to-back marathon training blocks and just do as many marathons as I can in a few years' time. I love marathons and I love the challenge that comes with it. But as someone who loves to improve their performance across a variety of distances from 10k up, I'm not going to say 5k, I like 5ks, but they're a little bit too hard. 10k and half and full are the 3 main ones that I love to focus on. I want to improve across all of those areas. And so if I cycle those training blocks by doing a 10k specific block or a speed block, and then sandwich that in with a marathon training block or a half block, that can be massively beneficial across the distance, across the board for my performances. I went into my Newport Marathon training with a half PB of 75 minutes, and I'm going to be going into my my spring 2024 marathon training with a PB of 73 minutes. And I think overall I took off about 1 minute and 20 seconds. Similarly with my 10k training, I went from a 33 minute and 38 second guy to a 33 minute and 00 guy. So I've taken 38 seconds off there, and just continually chipping away at those and cycling the training blocks and varying up the training a little bit allows you to just keep bringing those times down, so that each training block you go into, you're going into it a little bit fitter, a little bit faster, and again, a better all-round athlete if you're working on all of these areas. Using hills to your benefit has been massive for me this year, for my benefit as well as yours. There's a time and a place for them, and it depends what what type of training block you're doing. Cross-country stuff, obviously, they're brilliant to work on, because that's what the courses are like. They're hilly. You're certainly not going to be running a flat cross-country race. But when you're doing sort of road races, 10Ks and marathons and halves and stuff, if you're targeting flat races, there is still benefit to putting hill work within your training. Now, it can come in a multitude of formats, but the way that I like to use it is I like to use undulating trails or roads within workouts and just work by effort rather than pace, for the simple reason of, if you are a little bit pushed for time with strength work, you're going to get a double bang for your buck when you're out there doing those workouts, working on effort rather than pace, because you're going to be working harder on that undulating terrain and building up strength in those legs, which again over the years is just going to add up massively. Now, for me, what I like to do is understand there's a specific time when you get close to a race where you need to dial into flat road stuff, but in the beginning of training block and in certain workouts, you might want to be using those hills and, as I said, working on effort, so that in that period you're building up the strength and you're building up that real grit and determination in you, so that when you come to the final few weeks of a flat marathon training block, you transition to the roads. Suddenly you're flying on the roads because you're not working on hills, you're working back on a flat surface, and you suddenly feel like you're running on air, and it's absolutely incredible. It's such a great feeling, and it just gives you a massive confidence boost. I like to use them from the strength perspective, builds up the legs, makes them strong, and it makes you feel like you can be a little bit more resilient when it gets to those tougher parts in the race. And the last thing I want to mention is just disconnecting from technology a little bit and really homing in on what your body's telling you. I've kind of talked about this in a few videos recently, but I've got to throw it on the end of this one because it is one of the best things that I've really learned this year, just stepping back even further from where I was. I've never been a massive technology guy, but I really have become that type of runner now that just likes to go out there, hit start, hit stop, and job done. I never look at my splits on an easy or moderate run pace. All I ever have on my watch is average pace. I don't have any auto lap on, so I never get regular splits. I don't race with splits anymore. And when I come to races now, I'm taking them completely differently. My Newport Marathon, I went, right, I'm going to do 3 miles moderate, and when I get to 3 miles warm up, when I get to 3 miles hit lap, and then I'm going to do like 10 miles at marathon pace, lap, and I'm going to do another 10 miles at marathon pace, and try and run this one a little bit quicker than what I did in the previous one, and then lap, oh, I've got 3 miles to go. I like to play little games with myself and do things like that rather than worrying or getting obsessed over what the watch is telling me or what data is telling me. Perfect example, I went and ran my Oxford Half Marathon PB, 73 minutes, checked my Strava fitness graph, and I'm one of the lowest points of my fitness ever. And that's because those type of graphs work on a basis of like how fast can you run with the lowest heart rate, and it also praises you for the length of your runs rather than doing shorter, sharper runs. There's a multitude of reasons why those graphs don't always reflect what your fitness is at, and because I run out on undulating and hilly terrain, and sometimes my heart rate can be higher and therefore my pace would be a little bit slower, heart rate higher, that sort of thing. If I took everything I did and just did it on flat roads, those graphs would all be trending up, but because I don't, they can really not reflect the true fitness you're in. And I see a lot of people complain about those sorts of things, and you've just got to not let them get into your head. Yes, there's an element of needing to understand what those graphs do, and I understand what they do and how they show you what they do and what their formulas are. That's not for this video, and that's not for me to sit down and dive into. It's just to say to you guys out there, listen to your body. If you feel fit and you're running well in training and you know what you're kind of capable of, believe in yourself. Don't let technology tell you what it is. As I said, those graphs and that sort of data can be very misleading. Obviously, it can be very accurate at the same time, but if you're out there, like me, running on terrain that isn't necessarily flat and you're working by effort and that sort of thing, do take all of that stuff with a pinch of salt. Disconnect, enjoy what you're doing, and just run to feel and get fit that way. So those are the 6 of the best tips that I wanted to share with you guys to hopefully help massive consistency gains in 2024 for you, and also hopefully for me. As runners, we're going to get injured. It happens, and there's just sometimes not a lot we can do to avoid it, but we can do our best, can't we? And that's all we can ask for, and I'm sure I'll get injured at some point in the near future or in the future at some point, but for now I'm just kind of trying to remember a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about here, implementing it into my own training, and just hoping to keep stacking up those weeks, week on week on week. And I hope you guys can too. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic down in the comments below, and share your thoughts and tips. It will be great to hear from you down there. That's it from me today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider giving it a like, share it with your friends, and of course subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. I'll see you in the next one. Until then.